Most reporters try very hard to get it right, and reporters are good at telling us what happened today. What building burned down, what army invaded, the damage from a tornado. But when it comes to news that happens slowly, the media often get it utterly wrong. And I suspect they're getting it wrong now about things like global warming, trends in gun violence, GMO foods, any story related to science or statistics. Heck, basic math. It's a threat to many reporters. Combine that with the news proverb, if it bleeds, it leads, and you get some very misleading reporting. It's not that they do it on purpose. They want to give us the facts. But the people who bring reporters' story ideas are alarmed, and then we get alarmed and eager to rush that news to you. We know that the scarier and more bizarre a story, the more likely it is that our bosses will give us airtime or a front-page slot. Fear sells. If the story turns out not to be true later, well, so what? Everyone's moved on to the next scary story. And that's why it's good that now there's a new media organization called RetroReport that reveals media hype of the past.
We have word now of an explosion.
In the United States this year, at least 100,000 crack babies will be born.
The Tawana Brawley case.
Abducted and raped by 6 white men.
There's certain ideas that people want to believe, and it's hard to get rid of those.
The executive producer of RetroReport is Kira Darnton. Welcome. So why did you do this?
Well, we like to think that RetroReport is a counterbalance to the 24/7 news cycle, that as the pace of news has gotten so quick, you never really get to see the end of the story. Did predictions panned out? Were promises kept? And so we're building an online living library of modern news events where you can come to our website and you can interact with these different stories and really learn about, you get new context and perspective, both for what happened then and what they mean for us today.
Now, RetroReport took a look at a scare story that frightened everyone a number of years ago: crack babies.
In the 1980s, the media sounded the alarm that a new drug, crack cocaine, was taking over American cities, and that it had an especially devastating effect on pregnant women and their newborns.
Soon after our paper was published, within days we were getting calls from media all over the country and started hearing the term crack babies.
The number of babies born addicted has risen more than 500%.
These children, who are the most expensive babies ever born in America, are going to overwhelm every social service delivery system.
It now threatens to create an entirely new underclass of children unable to care for themselves.
I had lots of people interviewing me.
Yeah, he did. He was the scientist who promoted the research that created the alarm. And Kira, how many babies who had been exposed to crack did he study?
Only 23, so it was a very limited study. And he saw things like the tremoring babies and the high-pitched cries, and he thought this was a sign of major damage, but it turned out to be nothing of the sort. These babies all kind of developed in mostly normal ways. And yet there was...
Fetal alcohol syndrome turns out to be much worse. Alcohol was worse than crack.
Much worse, it turns out. But there were real implications to this, right? The story just became such a phenomenon, and all of a sudden there were laws passed and women were incarcerated for having cocaine in their bloodstream, and this, beyond even the stigma, babies were deemed unadoptable because they were crack babies. It shows the power of these false narratives that can really...
And the false narrative fit both the left and the right, because the right wanted to demonize cocaine and the left wanted more money for social programs.
And it also fit the third kind of bias, right, which is getting the story quickly, right? So not waiting and saying, well, here's a limited study, let's wait 6 months and see if anything comes of it. But also just that the myth persisted. I mean, this is 30 years later we're doing this
People
story.
Still think crack babies
still think
were permanently damaged.
And you actually, are pretty early on, about as the new research was coming, did a terrific piece.
Thank you. I will be self-serving. I'm glad she mentioned that, because I exposed this in one of my specials on junk science.
15 years ago, newspapers like Rolling Stone told us children born to crack-addicted mothers were like no others.
They lacked part of the brain that made them human, would make them wild, dangerous, oblivious to affection. They were like no others. It was disgusting. And thank goodness for Claire Coles of Emory University, the scientist who finally blew the whistle.
which is if people hear something 3 times, they think it's true, and that's what we're hopefully building at RetroReport, is a place to counteract some of those.
I hope so. Here's another scare story where the media went nuts.
There's a tidal wave of juvenile violent crime right over the horizon.
Super predators. Who is so impulsive, so remorseless, that he can kill, rape, maim without giving it a second thought.
This country went into a moral panic over super predators. They made it up.
I did sound an alarm, and I did use some rather strong language in terms of what might happen if we didn't react quickly.
The term super predator originated from an inmate who said, as almost a throwaway line, he said, "Yo, these kids, they're stone cold predators."
Super predator, predator, predators.
One throwaway line from an inmate, and it became the theme.
Once they latched onto this word super predator, everything changed. It just exploded in a way because it's this really evocative, disturbing, terrifying word, super predator. And yet, of course, now we know that none of that happened, and the crime rates were actually already starting to fall and have continued to fall.
Other things you've covered: 3 Mile Island, the Tawana Brawley case, the McMartin preschool, where these teachers were accused of molesting kids in bizarre ways. No one could believe kids would make stuff up, but when police keep questioning them, they did. Lives were wrecked. I'm glad you're setting the record straight. Thank you, Kira Darnton.